You want to know when I died? Not when my body stopped, no, I'm still breathing, unfortunately for some. I died at a dinner table in California, surrounded by laughter that wasn't meant for me, sitting at the far end like an ornament they forgot to dust. I died when my son stood up, glass raised high, voice full of pride and jokes, and made me the punchline of his success story. To my mother, who taught me patience, by never leaving. Never leaving. As if I was a stain. As if my presence was something to be endured, tolerated, survived. The room erupted. Oh, how they laughed. These people in their expensive igbatas and designer gellies, their bellies full of my jollof rice, their mouths wrapped around my puff, laughing at the woman who made sure there was enough for everyone. Laughing at me. And Kelvin, my Kelvin, the boy I carried on my back while selling oranges in traffic, the child I sang to sleep on empty nights, he smiled wider, drunk on their approval, and continued, you know what they say, some people retire, others just refuse to leave the stage. Refuse to leave the stage. My son, the stage is your life. The stage is the house I helped you build with hands that bled from washing other people's clothes. But that night, as the ceiling fan hummed louder than my heartbeat, as I held my spoon midair like a fool, frozen between swallowing and screaming, I realized something. I had become the uninvited guest in the story I wrote. Look at where they sat me. Look closely. Not at the head of the table where mothers belong. Not beside my son where honor lives. But at the far end, squeezed between the extra dishes and the folding chairs they only bring out when too many people show up. My new place, they called it. My new place. I raised a king and was given a beggar's seat. But I smiled. God help me, I smiled. I forced my mouth into that shape women like me have perfected, the smile that says, I'm fine, when your soul is hemorrhaging. I held my breath and counted the tiles on the ceiling because if I looked at their faces, if I really saw the pity mixed with relief in their eyes, would have broken right there. And grace doesn't break at dinner tables. Grace breaks alone, in bathrooms, with the tap running so no one hears. The laughter continued. Wave after wave of it, crashing over me, drowning me. Every chuckle was a knife. Every grin was a betrayal. These were people I fed when they visited. People whose children I carried. People who watched me sacrifice and sacrifice and sacrifice, and now they sat in my son's house that wouldn't exist without me, and laughed at the suggestion that I'd overstayed my welcome in his life. When the noise finally died down, when they'd squeezed every drop of humor from my humiliation, I did something I hadn't planned. My mouth opened, and words I didn't know I'd been preparing fell out. You're right, Kelvin. It's time I retired, from your life. Silence. Beautiful, terrible silence. The kind that makes you hear your own heartbeat, your own rage, your own grief. I stood up, slowly, deliberately, like a queen abdicating a throne no one knew she'd been sitting on. I straightened my faded scarf, the one I'd worn for 10 years because new ones weren't for women like me anymore, and I walked out. Not dramatically. Not with tears or screams. Just quietly, the way I'd done everything else in that house. Quietly. Always quietly. That's how they liked me. But let me tell you what they didn't know. Let me tell you the secret I'd been carrying for months while they were busy planning my irrelevance. I wasn't leaving on impulse. I wasn't running away like a wounded animal. No. I had been planning my retirement, my real retirement, from their version of my life, for exactly 7 months and 13 days. It started with a necklace. A small one I'd made from beads I bought at Balagan Market. I sold it to a woman at church for 800 naira. Then I made another. And another. Night after night, while they slept in their big beds, while Kelvin's wife Tommy dreamed in her air-conditioned master bedroom, I sat in the corridor with a tiny lamp, stringing beads and selling pieces of my dignity back to myself, one necklace at a time. I saved my pension, every kobo of it. The pension from 32 years of teaching in a government school where the roof leaked and the chairs were broken and we bought chalk with our own money. That pension they thought I was spending on small things. I touched nothing. Not 1 naira. I opened an account they knew nothing about, in a bank branch they'd never visit, under my maiden name, Grace Adeyemi. Not Grace Okonkwo. Not Mrs. Okonkwo. Not Kelvin's mother. Just Grace. I applied for a rural loan. Can you imagine? A 66-year-old woman, sitting across from a loan officer half her age, explaining that she needed money to buy her freedom. He looked at me like I was mad. Maybe I was. Maybe madness is the only sane response to being erased slowly, politely, with smiles and, "We're just worried about you, mummy." Nobody noticed. Of course they didn't notice. They were too busy, providing, for me. Providing. As if the food in that house wasn't cooked by my hands. As if the grandchildren weren't bathed by me while their parents were at brunches and gym sessions and spa days. As if I was the one receiving charity instead of giving it. I spent nights with a calculator that had missing buttons, whispering to myself like a woman possessed, "Just a little more, Grace. Just a little more." I counted and recounted. I subtracted transportation costs. I added buffer money for emergencies. I factored in the cost of leaving behind everything I'd known for 39 years. And somehow, the numbers started to look like hope. This wasn't impulse. This was architecture. I was building an exit while they were building my cage. But you want to know how I got here? You want to know the real reason? Let me take you back. Let me show you the foundation of this pain, because nothing breaks without cracks forming first. I was 24 years old when my husband died. 24. Kelvin was only 3 months old, so small I could hold him in one arm while I stirred soup with the other. David was coming home from a construction site in Badagry. A truck driver fell asleep at the wheel. They said David died instantly. They said it like that was supposed to comfort me. He didn't suffer. But I did. God, I suffered. No life insurance. No savings. No family who could help because David's people said I was cursed, that I'd killed their son with my bad luck. My own mother was already dead. My father had remarried and forgotten he had a daughter. So it was just me and Kelvin in a rented room in Mushin with walls so thin I could hear my neighbors breathing. I sold akra at dawn. I washed clothes in the afternoon. At night, I sewed buttons onto rich people's shirts for 50 naira apiece. My hands were never dry. Never soft. I watched other women my age going to parties, wearing lipstick, laughing with their husbands, and I felt like a ghost, alive but invisible, present but irrelevant. Kelvin grew. Children don't wait for you to be ready, they just grow. He needed school fees. He needed uniforms. He needed books and shoes that fit and food that wasn't just Gary and groundnuts. I gave him everything. I gave him everything by becoming nothing. When he was 12, he came home crying because other boys had laptops for their computer class and he didn't. He was being left behind, he said. He would fail, he said. I held him that night and promised him he wouldn't fail. The next morning, I took off my wedding ring, the only thing of value David had left me, and I sold it at a gold shop in Yaba for 48,000 naira. I bought Kelvin a used laptop for 35,000 and used the rest for his school fees. He never knew. I told him his father's family sent money. I lied because some truths are too heavy for children to carry. And Kelvin learned. God, he learned. He was brilliant. Teachers loved him. He won competitions. He got a scholarship to university. He graduated with first-class honors. And I stood at his convocation ceremony in a borrowed dress, crying tears that were equal parts joy and exhaustion, thinking, we made it. We survived. But survival has a cost they don't tell you about. The cost is that people see what you became in the process of saving them, and they're ashamed of it. They're ashamed of you. When Kelvin got his first job at that bank in Victoria Island, he sent me money every month. He was a good son. Let me be clear about that, he was good. He moved me out of Mushin into a small flat in Ikeja. He bought me a new phone. He took me to nice restaurants where I didn't recognize half the food on the menu. He was trying. But trying is not the same as seeing. Then he met Tommy. Beautiful Tommy with her long Brazilian hair and her master's degree from London and her father who owned hotels. Tommy who spoke English like she'd never heard Yoruba before, who wore perfume that cost more than my monthly groceries, who looked at me like I was a museum exhibit, Kelvin's poor mother, a study in suffering. The wedding was big. So big. 400 guests. I wore an asoabi they bought for me, sat in the front row, smiled for cameras. But I heard the whispers. Is that really his mother? She looks so ordinary. Where is she from? I heard she used to sell oranges. Past tense. As if my past wasn't also Kelvin's past. As if his success had erased where we came from. After they married, Kelvin built his house. A mansion, really, in Lekki. 5 bedrooms. A pool. A garden. Guest quarters. He insisted I move in. Mummy, you can't be living alone in that small flat. Come and stay with us. We have space. Space. The word haunted me. Because yes, they had physical space, rooms I got lost in, corridors that echoed, bathrooms with bathtubs I didn't know how to use. But there was no space for me. Not really. Tommy never said anything directly. She was too polished for that. Too well-bred. It was always, Mummy, you should rest more. Let the house girl handle the cooking. Mummy, we'll take the children to school. You don't have to wake up so early. Mummy, why don't you spend more time in your room? You have a TV there. My room. As if I was a tenant. As if I needed permission to exist in the house my son built with the brain I fed, the body I kept healthy, the spirit I refused to let die when we had nothing. I started noticing things. How they waited for me to go to bed before having their real conversations. How Tommy's friends visited less when I was around. How my grandchildren were taught to call me grandma instead of a mama, because it sounded more modern. How every suggestion I made about anything, food, child rearing, household management, was met with polite smiles and then completely ignored. I became a shadow in that house. Present but not participating. Alive but not living. I woke up at dawn and prayed for purpose. I went to bed at night and prayed for death. Not because I wanted to die, but because I couldn't figure out what I was still alive for. Then came the phone call. The one that changed everything. The one that turned my vague discomfort into concrete clarity. It was a Tuesday afternoon, 3 weeks before Kelvin's dinner party. I was bringing clean laundry upstairs. I still insisted on doing the laundry because I needed to feel useful, needed to have a reason to wake up. Their bedroom door was slightly open. I heard Tommy's voice. She was on speaker phone with someone, her sister, I think. Girl, I'm telling you, it's exhausting. She's always around. Always watching. Always there. It's like living with a shadow that judges everything you do. I can't breathe in my own house. I froze. The laundry basket pressed against my chest like a shield that wasn't working. Tommy continued, and Kelvin won't say anything because he feels guilty. But I didn't sign up for this. We have staff. We have money. Why can't she just, I don't know, go somewhere? A nice care home, maybe? Somewhere she can be with people her age? Her friend laughed, actually laughed, and said, just tell her. Be direct. Old people respect directness. I can't. You know Yoruba culture. But honestly, sometimes I wish she'd just take the hint and leave on her own. I stood in that hallway for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes. My arms went numb. The laundry basket dropped. Clothes scattered across the marble floor like pieces of my dignity. I didn't pick them up. I walked downstairs, slowly, mechanically, and I sat in my room, the guest room with that nice TV, and I stared at the wall. That night, I opened a notebook I'd bought months earlier. I'd titled it, Exit Plan, in a moment of dark humor I didn't know I possessed. The pages had been blank because I'd been too afraid to admit I needed an exit. But that night, after hearing myself described as a shadow, as a burden, as something to be removed, that night, I started writing. The plan came to me in pieces. First, I needed money. My pension alone wasn't enough. I needed to save aggressively, cut every expense, find ways to generate income they wouldn't notice. That's when I started the jewelry. Simple beaded necklaces at first, then I got bolder, earrings, bracelets, even elaborate wedding pieces. I sold them at church, at the market, to women in my prayer group. Small money. Slow money. But it added up. I stopped eating dinner with the family. I told them my stomach was sensitive, that I preferred eating earlier. The truth? I couldn't sit at that table anymore, couldn't smile through another meal where I was present but invisible. I ate in my room, Gary and groundnuts mostly, the food of my youth, and I saved the money they gave me for upkeep. I started researching. Where could a woman like me live on very little? Where could I be alone without being lonely? I remembered my late sister Folake had left a small piece of land in Abeokuta, near the old family compound. It had been abandoned for years, overgrown with weeds, forgotten. I took a bus there one Saturday when they thought I was at church. I walked the land. Touched the soil. Imagined peace. Near that land, I found a man selling a tiny mud house. 1 bedroom, a small parlor, a kitchen that was really just a corner with a kerosene stove. The roof needed work. The walls needed painting. But it had a door that locked from the inside, and that was enough. He wanted 4.2 million naira. I had 3.8 million saved. I begged. I negotiated like a woman with nothing to lose because I was a woman with nothing to lose. He agreed. I signed the papers 2 weeks before Kelvin's dinner. The man at the registry office asked me 3 times if I was sure. "Madam, this house is very small. You no get children to help you?" I looked at him and said, "I have a son. That's why I'm buying this house." He didn't understand. Nobody did. The morning after the dinner, after I'd retired from Kelvin's life with that one quiet statement, I packed my bag. Just one bag. I'm 66 years old and my entire life fits in one bag. How did I become so small? I packed my old clothes, the ones I wore before Kelvin started buying me new ones I never asked for. I packed the family photos they'd digitized and forgotten about but I still kept in albums. I packed my Bible, the one my mother gave me before she died, with her handwriting in the margins of Psalms. I packed 400 naira in cash and my new bank card. That was it. That was everything. I left a note on the kitchen table, "Don't look for me. I'm not lost." I boarded a night bus heading inland. Malya Transport, the kind Tommy wouldn't be caught dead in, the kind I used to ride when Kelvin was young and we couldn't afford better. I sat by the window, pressed my forehead against the glass, and watched Lagos disappear behind me. The city lights blurred into orange streaks. The noise faded into the rhythmic hum of tires on asphalt. My hand clutched the window rail, not out of fear, but out of disbelief. I was actually doing it. I was actually leaving. And for the first time in years, I smiled. Not the performance smile I'd perfected. Not the smile that said, "I'm fine," when I was dying. A real smile. Small and fragile, yes, but real. Because for once in my life, I was moving towards something instead of running away from something. I was choosing myself. The bus stopped in small towns along the way. Vendors rushed to the windows selling pure water and gala and banana. I bought roasted plantain from an old woman who reminded me of myself, tired eyes, strong hands, a smile that had survived too much. We didn't speak, but we understood each other. We were women who knew the weight of carrying others and the miracle of putting ourselves down. Morning came slowly, then all at once. The sun broke through the darkness like a promise God was reconsidering. The bus pulled into Abeokuta as the town was waking up. I stepped onto the red soil, breathed in air that smelled like rain and firewood, and thought, this is what freedom smells like. A woman was selling pap by the roadside. She had set up a small table with a kerosene stove, blue plastic cups, and a pot of akamu that steamed in the cool morning air. I walked over, asked for a cup. She served me with a smile that didn't expect anything in return. I paid her 50 naira, more than she asked for, and I said, quietly, almost to myself, it's been years since I bought something with my own money. She looked at me strangely, but kindly. Madam, you know day buy things before? I did. But not for myself. Never for myself. She nodded like she understood. Maybe she did. Maybe all women understand the mathematics of self-erasure, the way we subtract ourselves to make others add up. I finished the pap standing there by the roadside. It tasted like childhood. Like Saturday mornings when life was simple and pain hadn't learned my address yet. When I was done, I wiped my mouth with the back of my hand, not a napkin, not a tissue, my hand, and I felt like myself again. Not Kelvin's mother. Not Tommy's burden. Not the shadow in the hallway. Just grace. I found a motorcycle taxi, an Okada with a rider who looked about 19, all youthful confidence and reckless speed. I gave him the address the land agent had written for me. He frowned. Madam, that place na bush o. You sure say na there you day go? I'm sure. We rode through winding roads that turned to paths that turned to dirt tracks. Past houses getting smaller and simpler. Past children playing football in the street with a deflated ball. Past old men sitting under trees solving the problems of the nation. Past churches and mosques existing side by side, their prayers mingling in the morning air. Then we arrived. My house. My tiny, imperfect, beautiful house. It was smaller than I remembered. The roof sagged in the middle. The walls were more gray than white. The windows had no glass, just wooden shutters hanging at odd angles. Vines had claimed the sides of the building, wrapping around it like nature was trying to take it back. The compound was overgrown with grass taller than my knees. It looked abandoned. It looked forgotten. It looked perfect. I paid the Okada rider. He asked if I wanted him to wait, madam, in case you change your mind, but I shook my head. I wasn't changing my mind. I was done changing my mind to fit other people's comfort. I walked to the front door. The key was in my bag, the one the agent had given me with a look that said he thought I was crazy. Maybe I was. Maybe sanity is overrated when it means staying where you're not wanted. I put the key in the lock. It stuck at first, rust and time conspiring against me. I jiggled it, forced it, and finally, it turned. The door swung open with a creak that sounded like a question, "Are you sure?" I stepped inside. Dust everywhere. Dust on the floor, the walls, floating in the air like memories of whoever lived here before. Sunlight poured through the shutters in thick golden beams, illuminating the emptiness. The room was bare except for an old wooden table and a bench that had termite damage. But it was mine. Every dusty inch of it was mine. I whispered, my space. And I started crying. Not sad tears. Not happy tears. Something in between. Relief tears, maybe. The kind you cry when you finally stop holding your breath after years of suffocating. I spent that first day just existing in the space. Sweeping slowly. Opening windows. Letting light in. I found a bucket and fetched water from the community well down the path. The water was cold and clean. I washed my face, my arms, my feet. I felt baptized. That night, I slept on the floor with my wrapper as a mattress and my bag as a pillow. I didn't care. I slept better than I had in years. No air conditioning. No soft bed. No comfort. Just peace. Finally, peace. But peace doesn't last when you have a son who considers you property. 2 days later, I was sweeping the front yard when I heard it, the sound of an engine that didn't belong in this neighborhood. I looked up and there it was, Kelvin's SUV, that massive black thing that screamed, "I've made it," kicking up dust as it came to a stop in front of my house. He got out slowly, deliberately, trying to look calm, but I could see the anger vibrating under his skin. He wore his work clothes, expensive shirt, Italian shoes, gold watch. He looked ridiculous here, like a peacock in a chicken coop. "Mom," he said, his voice tight. "What is this? What are you doing here?" I continued sweeping. I didn't look up. Living. This? He gestured at the house like it was an insult to the concept of shelter. This is not living. This is. I don't even know what this is. You can't just disappear like that. Do you know how worried we've been? Do you know what people are saying? Ah, there it was. What people are saying. Not, "I was worried about you." Not, "Are you okay?" But what people are saying. I stopped sweeping. I leaned on the broom, an old one I'd found in the house, handle worn smooth by previous hands, and I looked at him. Really looked at him. My son. My achievement. My betrayal. "What are people saying, Kelvin?" He faltered. They think I abandoned you. They think I'm a bad son. And are you? What? No. I gave you everything. A beautiful home, money, comfort. You gave me a room, Kelvin. Not a home. There's a difference. He ran his hand over his face, frustrated. "Mom, you're not making sense. You can't just run away like a child. You're too old for this nonsense. Too old." He said it again. I'd been too old in his house for years, apparently. Now I was too old to choose myself. I put down the broom and walked closer to him. He towered over me. When did he get so tall? But I felt bigger than him in that moment. "I've been old in your house for years, Kelvin. Old and useless and in the way. Now I want to be young in mine. I want to wake up without permission. I want to cook what I want, when I want. I want to sit in my own space without wondering if I'm taking up too much of it. Is that nonsense? Is choosing myself nonsense?" He was silent. His mouth opened and closed like a fish drowning in air. His pride, that massive pride I'd helped build, was cracking. I could see the boy I raised flickering behind the man he'd become, confused, hurt, not understanding why I would reject the life he thought he'd given me. "I tried to provide for you," he said, and his voice broke just a little. "I know. And I'm grateful. But providing is not the same as seeing. You gave me things, Kelvin. Things. You never asked what I needed. You never asked if I was happy. You just assumed that because you weren't the struggling boy anymore, I wasn't the struggling woman. But I was struggling. Just differently." He tried to step closer, his arms reaching out for a hug. The instinct to comfort, to fix, to return things to how they were. But I stepped back. Gently, but firmly. His arms dropped. "Mom. Go home, Kelvin. Go home to your wife, your children, your big house. Let me breathe. I don't understand. I know. And that's okay. You don't have to understand. You just have to respect it." He stood there for a long moment, looking at me like I was a stranger. Maybe I was. Maybe the woman he thought he knew, the grateful mother, the sacrificial martyr, the shadow, had never really existed. Maybe I'd been someone else all along, and we'd both been too busy surviving to notice. Finally, he walked back to his SUV. He opened the door, paused, looked back at me one more time. "I'll come back," he said. It sounded like a threat and a promise. "If you do, call first." He drove away. The dust settled. I went back to sweeping. The weeks that followed were the strangest of my life. Strange because they were ordinary. Beautifully, wonderfully ordinary. I woke up when the sun woke me, not when an alarm demanded it. I ate when I was hungry. I cooked what I craved, sometimes just yam and palm oil, the simple food of my childhood that Tommy's kitchen had no room for. I started fixing the house. A man from the village helped me repair the roof for 12,000 naira. A woman sold me paint, yellow paint, bright and ridiculous and nothing like the tasteful beige of Kelvin's mansion. I painted the whole house myself over 3 days. My back ached. My arms burned. I was covered in yellow splatters. I felt alive. I planted cassava in the back. Cleared the overgrown grass. Found an old tire and turned it into a planter for flowers, pink bougainvillea that would bloom in a few months. I made plans. Not big plans, not ambitious plans, just plans. That alone felt revolutionary. My neighbor, Mama Dupe, introduced herself on the 4th day. She was about my age, maybe a bit younger, with a gap-toothed smile and no filter. She sold akra by the roadside every morning and evening, and gossip all day long. "So you be the woman way by the house?" she asked, appearing at my door uninvited with a plate of akra still hot from the oil. "Yes." "Where your husband?" "Dead." "Long time." "Your children?" "In Lagos." She nodded, satisfied with this brief biography. "Good. Make we be friends. I too tire for dis village. Everybody too quiet. You go add small ginger for the place." I didn't know I needed a friend until I had one. Mama Dupe came by every evening after selling her akra. We sat on my small porch. I'd bought 2 plastic chairs from a man in the market, and we talked. She told me about her lazy son who couldn't keep a job. Her daughter who married a pastor and now thought she was too holy to visit. Her late husband who died owing everyone money. I told her about Kelvin. About the dinner. About the phone call. About becoming a shadow. She listened with the kind of attention that heals, nodding at the right moments, kissing her teeth at the injustice, laughing when I described Tommy's horrified face when I announced my retirement. "These children SEF," she said one evening as the sun set in streaks of orange and pink. "We suffer for them, we sacrifice, we give them wings to fly, and when they fly, they forget who taught them." "But we taught them," I said. "So they could fly. That's the point, isn't it?" "Not true. But dem no suppose forget the nest." We sat in comfortable silence after that, watching the night arrive with its chorus of crickets and frogs. Under that same moonlight that used to illuminate my tears in Lekki, I laughed. I laughed about stupid things: Mama Dupe's neighbor who kept stealing her firewood, the village pastor who preached for 3 hours every Sunday, the children who called me "that woman from Lagos" like it was a title. I was healing. Slowly, imperceptibly, like a wound you forget you have until one day you realize it doesn't hurt anymore. Kelvin sent money twice. The first time, 30,000 naira appeared in my old account with the message, "For food and upkeep." I sent it back immediately with my own message, "I have enough." The second time, he sent 50,000 with, "Please, Mom. Let me help." I sent it back again, "You can help by understanding." He called 17 times in the first month. I didn't pick up. Not out of cruelty, but out of necessity. I needed the silence. I needed to hear my own thoughts without his voice, laden with guilt and expectations, drowning them out. I didn't hate him. That's important to understand. I didn't hate my son. I hated what he'd allowed me to become in his world. I hated the version of myself that accepted invisibility as the price of his love. But Kelvin himself? The boy who used to curl up beside me when thunderstorms scared him? The teenager who brought me flowers with his first salary? That Kelvin I still loved. I just couldn't love him at the expense of myself anymore. People from the village started to warm up to me. The woman who sold vegetables gave me extra tomatoes. The mechanic's wife brought me soup when I had a cold. Children started greeting me, calling me Auntie Grace. I joined a small prayer group that met under a mango tree every Wednesday. We prayed for rain, for health, for our wayward children, for guidance. Simple prayers for simple lives. I wasn't lonely. That surprised me most. I thought I'd be lonely. I thought the silence would swallow me. But the silence was different here. In Kelvin's house, silence was exclusion, the conversations that stopped when I entered, the laughter that didn't include me. Here, silence was peace. It was mine. One Saturday, I went to the market and bought fabric. Beautiful Ankara print with patterns of yellow suns and blue birds. I hadn't sewn anything in years. There'd been no need, no time, no space in Kelvin's house for old women with old hobbies. But I found my old sewing machine, the one I'd brought from Lagos, tucked in my bag, and I set it up on the wooden table. I made a dress. Simple, nothing fancy. But as I sewed, foot pressing the pedal, needle piercing fabric, creating something from pieces, I felt myself being stitched back together too. 4 months passed. The rainy season came and went. My cassava sprouted. The bougainvillea bloomed, pink and defiant against the yellow walls. I turned 67. I celebrated alone with a bottle of malt and some chin-chin. It was the best birthday I'd had in years. Then the letter came. A postal worker on a motorcycle delivered it one afternoon. The envelope was cream-colored, expensive. My name and address written in Kelvin's handwriting, precise, controlled, the handwriting of a man who'd learned that presentation matters. I almost didn't open it. I held it for a long time, sitting on my porch, watching Mama Dupe's Accra smoke rise in the distance. Finally, I slid my finger under the seal and pulled out the letter. It was handwritten. Not typed. Handwritten. That alone made me pause. Kelvin hadn't handwritten anything in years, everything was emails and text messages and voice notes. The letter said, "Dear Mom. I've written this letter 7 times. The first 6 times, I was trying to convince you to come back. I was listing reasons, making promises, building arguments. Then I realized I was still doing the same thing, telling you what I thought was best for you without asking what you wanted. So this is not me asking you to come back. This is me saying I understand now. Or I'm trying to understand. It's hard, Mom. It's hard to see that I hurt you when I thought I was helping you. It's hard to accept that the home I built for you felt like a cage. Tommy and I have been talking. Really talking, not just existing in the same house. She told me about the phone call. She told me you heard her. She's ashamed. She apologized. But I told her the apology should come from me. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm sorry I made you feel invisible. I'm sorry I laughed at you in front of everyone. I'm sorry I didn't see you, the real you, not the version I'd built in my head of my mother who needs care and rest. You didn't leave me, did you? You left the version of me that didn't see you. That's what I'm learning. That's what keeps me up at night. The kids ask about you.